Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into the subject of resilience, but maybe not in the way you're used to thinking about it. We're not talking about that kind of grit your teeth, go it alone strength. We're exploring how we sustain our inner life, our contemplative side, especially when a real crisis hits.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how our culture really pushes that narrative, the idea that any real personal or spiritual work, it has to be this intense solo discipline.
Totally. You picture the meditator up at dawn in a quiet room all alone. It's all about self-mastery.
Right. The lone hero on their journey.
Exactly. And the sources we've been looking at, they point to a really critical weakness in that story, this intensely private practice, what's known as sadhana.
The daily spiritual effort, basically.
Yes, that effort, it often just completely falls apart in moments of deep suffering. I mean, think about a major health crisis or the sheer exhaustion of being a caregiver.
Oh, for sure. Or just profound emotional burnout. Suddenly that discipline that felt so solid, your morning meditation, your prayer, it doesn't just feel hard. It can feel, I don't know, almost physically impossible.
Repugnant, even. The sources use that word.
Yeah. You just can't muster the will because your internal resources are just gone.
Yeah.
The foundation you were building on is just eroded by pain.
So when our own effort fails us, where do we turn? And that's where this concept we're really digging into comes in, satsang.
And the translation can be a little misleading at first. People often just say gathering or association.
Which sounds like just a get-together.
Right. But the sources, they really stress the deeper meaning. Sat means truth or reality, essence. And Sangha is company or community.
So the company of truth.
Exactly. That's the operational meaning for this dive. It immediately shifts the focus from, just a social club to a shared orientation towards something real.
That feels like a crucial distinction. It's not just hanging out. It's a deliberate alignment with reality, especially when your own reality feels like it's fracturing.
Precisely. It's a collective act of remembering. Remembering that fundamental truth when you as an individual are too exhausted or confused to remember it for yourself.
Okay, so that really sets up our mission for this deep dive. Our research suggests satsang is this essential bridge. It connects sadhana, that personal effort that can be so fragile, to what we call spiritual care, which is all about supporting meaning and hope and dignity when you're at your most vulnerable. So we're going to unpack what satsang actually does.
In both of those areas, yeah. How it reinforces practice and how it provides care.
Okay, let's unpack this, maybe starting with just how limited that solo practice can really be.
Well, sadhana, is that individual path of meditation, prayer, self-inquiry. It's absolutely vital for growth when things are relatively calm.
When you have the resources for it.
Exactly. But what we find from lived experience is that this path is not linear at all. It's built on effort, and effort is one of the first things that serious stress, physical or psychological, just systematically dismantles.
And the accounts from practitioners in our research are so vivid on this. They talk about the specific things that just act like a wrecking ball on a practice you've had for years.
Like what?
Being actively ill, dealing with chronic pain, or taking on that immense emotional and logistical weight of caregiving for a loved one, the whole structure just crumbles.
And you see these very specific symptoms of that collapse.
Yeah, the mind becomes incredibly restless. The body physically resists stillness. And maybe worst of all, this deep corrosive doubt starts to creep in.
Doubt about the whole path you've been on.
Exactly. Is any of this even real? Was it all a waste of time?
It's the ultimate resource depletion. I mean, if your emotional gas tank is on empty, you can't just will yourself into a state of inner peace. It's just not a realistic expectation.
And that's the moment, right? That's when satsang becomes not just like a nice to have, but almost necessary.
It has to be. Because like you said, it doesn't demand effort from you when you have zero effort left to give. The whole point is that the structure itself is designed to hold you when your own willpower is gone.
So it's a safety net.
That's the core function, yeah. The continuity of your awareness is sustained, not by your personal grit, but just by your presence. You're held up by remembrance, just by sitting quietly with others who are all oriented toward that same truth.
Whether it's through silence or scripture or song, it doesn't really matter.
The method varies, but the function is the same.
I want to key in on that phrase, sustained by remembrance, because for someone listening who's maybe a bit skeptical, that could sound, I don't know, a little abstract.
Okay.
Are you saying I don't have to do anything? I just show up and what? I'm sort of borrowing spiritual energy from the group.
In a way, yes. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You're borrowing the sustained orientation of the collective. Think of it less like an individual effort and more like taking a small flickering candle into a room filled with hundreds of steady flames.
Ah.
Your flame is struggling, but the collective light and warmth make sure it doesn't go out. You just show up, and the container, the group itself, does the work of remembering for you until you can hold your own focus again.
That sounds so much more forgiving than the usual self-help model. And that forgiveness alone must be so healing when you're already beating yourself up for failing at your practice.
Absolutely. Guilt is just another tax on an already depleted system. Satsang removes that tax.
So if the tank is empty, how exactly does sitting together work? How does it refill it, or at least keep the car from stalling? Here's where it gets really interesting, because the research actually points to 4 specific, almost scientific mechanisms.
Right. It's not just a nice idea. There are actual functions.
Mm.
The first one deals with that emotional fallout you just mentioned, restoring motivation through relationship.
Okay.
When your practice falls apart, your ego tends to scream that it's this huge personal spiritual failure. You're just not good enough.
I know that feeling.
But when you're in a group, you see other people, some with way more experience than you, some just starting out, and you see their struggles. They're right there on the surface.
So seeing someone you respect, someone you see as wise, also admit they're struggling with restlessness or doubt, that just normalizes the whole experience.
Exactly. It reframes the whole spiritual journey. It's not this perfect linear ascent to enlightenment. It's a messy, shared human thing. And when you realize it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back for everyone, your own struggle stops feeling like a personal failure.
And that gives you the motivation to just keep showing up because you belong in your imperfection.
You belong. That's it.
I love that. Okay, the second mechanism is more subtle, it seems. Transmitting wisdom beyond words. The sources mention that when we're under intense stress, our intellectual brain, the part that can analyze a sermon or read a dense text, is basically offline.
It's fried. But just because your intellect is tired doesn't mean you can't learn. In Satsang, the teachings aren't just explained, they're embodied. You absorb them. You see calm presence. You feel humility. You witness genuine compassion from the people around you, maybe from a teacher, maybe from the person next to you. It's transmitted silently, like through osmosis. It just bypasses your exhausted mind completely.
So if I'm too tired to even read a paragraph, I can still absorb the quality of peace just by being near someone who embodies it. That's a huge argument for the nonverbal side of healing.
It is. It's learning through resonance, not through information.
And resonance is the perfect segue to the third mechanism, which I think is fascinating because it's so physiological, regulating the nervous system.
This is where you see the biology of co-regulation. If you're in a group doing some kind of shared ritual chanting, praying together, or even just sitting in deep collective silence, your nervous system literally starts to sync up with others.
Wait, are you serious? So I don't have to force myself to calm down. The person next to me who is calm, their nervous system actually helps mine settle.
It is a literal physiological effect, yes. Through things like heart rate variability, synchronization, regulated breathing patterns, your highly activated fight-or-flight response meets this shared field of settled attention, and it just naturally starts to calm down.
Wow.
And that co-regulation creates the necessary groundwork, the quiet state that makes it possible to meditate on your own again later, when before it was impossible because of anxiety.
It sets the stage for peace instead of demanding it. What a huge difference. Okay, and the fourth one keeps it all real. Keeping practice human.
Yeah, this is the guardrail against the pitfalls of going it alone. A solo practice, a sādhana, can get really rigid or judgmental, or it can become overly intellectual and detached from real life.
Right, it becomes this abstract theory of perfection that you can never actually live up to.
And satsang keeps it grounded. It keeps the practice relational, compassionate, and rooted in the messy, beautiful details of being a person in the world.
That's a complete picture. So, okay, let's pivot here. We've seen how it supports practice. But what happens when the practice isn't just struggling, it's gone? When someone is in a full-blown crisis? How does satsang become pure spiritual care?
When effort is off the table, the goal shifts completely. It's no longer about transformation. It's about maintenance, maintaining dignity, meaning hope, and belonging. Spiritual care focuses on those 4 pillars, and satsang, it turns out, naturally provides all of them.
Let's take the first one, which is maybe the hardest thing for any of us to do in our culture. Presence without fixing.
Oh, it's so hard. But the sources are crystal clear on this. Satsang doesn't try to rush suffering toward a solution. The real healing is in the simple act of being witnessed.
Just being seen.
That profound feeling that someone truly sees your struggle, your fear, your anger, but without judging it, without giving you advice, and this is key, without any urgency for you to feel differently.
Why is that lack of fixing so important?
Because when we rush to fix someone's pain, we're subtly invalidating their current reality. We're saying, you shouldn't be feeling this. Satsang offers containment. It creates a safe space where the pain, the doubt, the fear can just exist. And paradoxically, that's what reduces their power.
That safety then allows for the second pillar, which is meaning-making through shared stories.
Yes. When people in the group share their own difficult stories, their battles with fear, their anger at their body, their moments of surrender, it gives other people a chance to see their own experience in a new light.
The sources use a great analogy here. They say the stories act as mirrors, not prescriptions.
I love that. A prescription tells you what you should do, what your outcome ought to be. But a mirror just lets you see yourself reflected in the wider human story.
You see that your pain, as unique as it feels, is also universal.
And that realization, that universality, is what helps you find new meaning. It pulls you out of your intense isolation and puts you back into the human family.
Which leads right to the third pillar. Belonging during vulnerability. Serious illness especially can just shatter your identity. You stop being a parent, a professional, a runner. You start being defined by a diagnosis. You're a patient. You're a griever.
And that fracture can be incredibly isolating. Satsang works to restore your connection to a deeper self, a sense of self that exists beyond any diagnosis or job title. It confirms that your core essence, your sat, is still there, still valuable, still part of the whole, no matter what your body is going through.
And finally, there's hope without denial. And we should be clear, this is not about toxic positivity, that everything's going to be magically cured.
Not at all. Satsang is deeply realistic. It doesn't promise to reverse your external circumstances. What it supports is a realistic hope.
Which would be what?
Hope for peace in this moment, hope for clarity on a tough decision, hope for reconciliation in a relationship, or just hope for inner freedom and dignity, even when the medical prognosis is deeply uncertain. It's a shift from hoping to change your life to hoping to meet your life with grace.
This framework is so powerful. And the sources point to very specific applications, like in oncology care, right alongside medical treatment.
Absolutely. It provides that essential non-clinical space. For patients, it helps them connect with a sense of purpose beyond the disease. For caregivers, it's a place where they can finally be held instead of always having to be the strong one.
Which is so critical for preventing burnout.
And even for clinicians, the doctors, the nurses, it can be a space to process their own moral fatigue and emotional exhaustion, which almost never gets talked about.
And it creates a space for spiritual distress, that raw anger at God, the loss of faith. Without ever trying to solve it, it just lets it be seen.
It just witnesses it, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap this all up, we have to address one point of confusion. Because someone listening might be thinking, this sounds great, but how is it really any different from group therapy or a good support group for grief or cancer?
That's maybe the most important distinction to make. Because therapy and support groups are incredibly valuable, but they operate from a different premise. A support group, for instance, is usually focused on coping strategies, on problem-solving a shared external issue. They're outcome-oriented.
And Satsang is not.
Its aim is fundamentally different. It's focused on truth, presence, and being. The goal isn't to manage the immediate problem, but to connect with the ultimate nature of reality, right in the midst of the problem.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? What's a concrete difference?
Well, think about silence. In many support groups, a long silence can feel awkward, like nothing is happening. The goal is to talk and share. In Satsang, silence is essential. It's the medium for that nonverbal wisdom we talked about, for co-regulation.
Right. And what about something like doubt?
Good one. In a support setting, you might work to overcome your doubt. In Satsang, doubt is welcomed as part of the path. It's not a problem to be fixed. It's just an honest expression of where you are.
And the last piece is transcendence.
Yes. Satsang openly allows for a sense of something larger than the individual, larger than the crisis. That's often a core part of the experience, whereas most therapeutic models, for good reason, stay grounded in psychological or behavioral realities.
But that really clarifies it, and it brings us to this beautiful arc, this continuum the sources describe. You start with sādhana, using effort to transform yourself.
Then you move to satsang, which uses presence to sustain yourself when your effort is gone.
And then finally, there's spiritual care, which relies purely on belonging and dignity to hold you when transformation isn't even the goal anymore, when peace and acceptance are all that matter.
And that compassionate arc means that support, that company of truth, is available across the whole spectrum of life, through health and illness, through effort and surrender. It's not a technique you use, it's a field of shared humanity you can enter.
A constant.
It's the acknowledgement that our inner life is inherently relational, not independent.
Wow. That's a profound way to look at life, whether you're well or in a crisis. So, we've defined satsang. We've understood its role in reinforcing our practice through these really specific mechanisms, and we've seen how it functions as powerful spiritual care. So at the end of the day, what does this all mean for us?
I think ultimately the sources are challenging that fiercely independent story our modern world loves to tell. The idea that you have to master yourself by yourself.
Do it alone.
Right. And satsang reminds us of a quieter and maybe more truthful reality. The very existence of these gatherings suggests that our deepest human journeys are shared, whether we admit it or not.
It reminds us of that fundamental truth. We do not awaken alone. We do not heal alone. We do not suffer alone. The knowledge that sometimes the most powerful spiritual thing you can do is just show up and sit with other people in truth. It's such a powerful counterpoint to the myth of the solo hero.
It shifts the burden from individual willpower to collective presence.
An incredible thought to mull over. Thank you for diving into the company of truth with us today.